If you have been enjoying Edinburgh Business Stories and you want to keep up to date with some of the new episodes we've got coming out every other week, then why not subscribe? The stories, the guests we have are absolutely incredible and we wouldn't want you to miss out. Andy, so great to have you on.
Great to be here.
So just give us a snapshot of who you are and what your business is.
My name's Andy Hadden. I'm the founder of Lost Shore Surf Resort, which is a really big surf resort that's coming to Edinburgh in October. It's going to be running sort of endless waves. It's a real dream for surfers, but more than that, it's a resort. So we're going to have some of Scotland's finest food and events curated by some of our best local businesses, and we've also got some of Scotland's finest accommodation. So ultimately, we're pretty excited. We're almost getting to the end here, and yeah, we're just to get open.
You can see it. You can see it on your face. You're excited.
Definitely. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah. So before I know we want to dive right into it and hear about it, but let's just go back to the beginning, and you can go as far back as you like. So how did you end up here? What's your story into business? Into Lost Shore Surf Resort was I received a very fortuitous email. I was actually a chartered surveyor by trade, and I was made redundant after a session. Went down to Birmingham and I worked in insolvency, which is essentially it's kind of helping businesses out of trouble, but was mainly just closing up their assets, insuring them and selling them. So it was a very interesting learning experience. But at that time, I was doing a lot of surfing. I was always into my sport, particularly rugby, but played any sport under the sun really. I was doing a lot of surfing down by the coast, down in Newquay, down in South Wales, and I received an all parties email to all the staff. I was at Colliers International at the time, and there was a guy called Sean Young, who's a good friend of mine now, and he was the head of the destination consulting business in London. So he was a far more credible guy than I was, or I am even now. But he said, "Look, I'm doing a study on an inland surf park in Bristol." So I picked up the phone to him from Birmingham and said, "Sean, I surf, and this sounds like gobbledygook, to be honest. It's just one of these things that's like on the back of a yacht, or on the back of a cruise ship." I said, "This can't be real surfing." He said, "Andy, I've met these guys in the Basque Country. They've been at this for 10 years, secretly in the mountains of the Basque Country. They are creating real surfing waves." I said, "No, it can't be. This is 100 years in the future. Can you get me there?" I said, I'll have a word. And I was very lucky that he managed to speak to Wavegarden, who are based in the Basque Country, and they allowed someone like me to go over and take a look at it. And from that day on, what I saw, with these engineers in the Basque Country, I looked at this, I surfed it. It was an early machination of their technology, and I was like, this is real. This is actually surfing. Like, they've created a mini ocean. How much fun would this be? And I thought, well, where do I even start? And what I learned that day, because they were engineers, they said, "Andy, if you're really going to have a go at this, you're going to get all sorts of different companies from around the world calling you and telling you, showing you, oh, here's what we can do with a render, or here's an example of a bathtub." He said, "But we've been trying and failing for 10 years. When you're dealing with the amount of water that we're going to be dealing with, the lagoon is the size of three Wembley football pitches. It's absolutely massive. There can be up to 90 people in the cove at one time. When you're dealing with those dynamic forces and the power of the waves, things break." And he said, "So we've done our breaking early, and that's why I thought to myself, if I'm going to do this in a rainy enclave in Northern Europe, I want this to be an institutional grade development and leave no stone unturned." And that's really where the journey began.
And Andy, so had you seen the thing that you were visiting in the Basque Country? Had you seen it, or was it just like when you saw it for the first time, you were there? There
was by this stage, I think there was maybe a clip on the internet floating about that surfers were kind of talking about. But what was quite cool was when I turned up, in the Basque Country, and I was met by a guy, Fernando, a good friend of mine, one of the owners of Wavegarden. I said, "Right, send me the postcode, I'll drive there." He said, "No. No postcodes, you follow me."
Oh, was it a secret location?
Secret location in the Basque Country, to the point where even surfers back then that had heard about this had gone to try and find it and stuff. Because if you're a surfer, you had an inkling that this might be about to change, and that can be for the good or the bad. but you were on the outset of an industry that was going to change the sport of surfing forever, because ultimately you can't rely on Mother Nature, and there's 45 million odd surfers in the world, and we're all pretty addicted to that feeling. And to be able to just lock in perfect waves whenever you wanted is like nirvana, you know. So they wanted to be very careful that what they were doing in the mountains there couldn't be reverse engineered or by others. And they've been very protective of their IP even to this day.
Is it still a secret location, or is it now?
No.
Right.
I mean, you can see it from the road, actually, when you go around down the mountains. I said, Fernando, what's that? He said, but it was just farmers going past, you know. He said, once surfers, and it really is hidden. You had to go through a village and all down a wee track. But a wonderful, wonderful experience that was. And I just thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to throw a bit of mud at this, because I was going through a bit of an existential crisis myself, having been made redundant. And I really thought to myself, you know, growing up, what my family talked about was sport and infrastructure. My father was a PE teacher and a rugby coach, and actually our big thing was kids in Scotland just didn't have the facilities in order to, you know, reach their maximum potential. And in Scotland, we've always had to use the resources we have to good measure. And it used to frustrate the hell out of me, because I was really lucky to go to a good rugby school, and I had everything. My dad was a PE teacher there. I had everything: tennis courts, rugby pitches. Could go and do the high jump if I wanted. You know, it was unbelievable. And sport really helped me in my life. You know, I got deep. I never became a master of any sport, but it really helped me. And I thought, oh, you know, wouldn't it be great to be able to do something for Scotland that's bringing a facility where others can then find their own adventure. So I think that was a big inspiration for me to actually embark on this.
So how do you get from being over there, checking it out, coming home on the plane, being like, maybe I'll do this? Like, how does that?
I knew straight away, because it's like, because of what was happening to me, you know, I had a decent job. I enjoyed my time down there in Birmingham, but I realised after a session that if you're working for a big company, you're just not in control of your future. You just aren't. You're at the whim of the macro economy. So I suppose deep down must have been subconsciously going, if I'm going to get made redundant again, I'd rather do it on my own terms, you know. And then you look yourself in the mirror and say you've made some mistakes. But likewise, if you're going to do a good job, you know, you can hopefully enjoy it. So I think I was very determined to do something for myself and live and die by my own sword. I was already at peace. I wasn't going to be, you know, head of some big property company. So I thought, well, if I'm going to try and do this, let's move home from Edinburgh. I took a bit of a pay cut, convinced my wife, she was just probably my fiance at the time, I'm not sure, and she's a GP. She can tide us over a wee bit. And went out, took a pay cut, and thought, I'm going to live by the coast, because no one can take surfing away from me, and that's it. No one can stop you doing that. And then just by living that life early, it's allowed me to go on and create not just this business, but another flexible workspace business.
And amazing. And so when you said you wanted to throw some mud at it, your phrase, what did that actually mean? What happened then?
Well, I thought to myself, if I'm going to, there was a few moments, if I'm going to embark on this, I was actually then went to work in property investment after insolvency. So what I was doing was I was buying and selling or sourcing assets for very low risk funds based mainly in London, shopping centres, industrial estates, whatever it was. And if they got wind of their agent who was trying to sell one of these deals to them was starting a surf park in Scotland, my reputation was going to be in tatters straight away. So I thought, if I'm going to do this, I have to try and de-risk the whole project using property metrics, so land ownership, buying land at the edge, even if it was going to take longer. And I need to make sure this business plan isn't just surfing, even though in hindsight, I think these are doing fantastically well everywhere they're open around the world, which is great. But I thought, I want to do this. So it's 3 business plans. It's accommodation, just like a centre parks would be, a place for families to go. It's also, as you know, in Edinburgh, well, I certainly do it with the families. I've got Dalkeith Country Park, got Port Edgar, got Archfield Wavegarden. The reason you go there, good food, nice vibe, kids are happy. Yeah. Thought if you can get onto that circuit as well, got myself 3 business plans, and then if I could
have a location that's de-risked because it's beside Europe's largest indoor climbing arena. And that's the type of institutional grade investment that we have become now. And we're backed by Goldman Sachs and so on now. It's a really, big business now. I thought, well, now I've got the ingredients to talk sensibly, even in those early years. I mean, it didn't mean anyone treated me like I was sensible, but it meant that in my head, I had a coherent business plan.
Well, I mean, that's it. You say talk sensibly, but this is not a sensible, the concept of what you have achieved is, 0.1% chance of it happening.
Oh,
like that.
Yeah. I mean, I was totally.
So it's so weird that it's just like, I'll do 3 business plans. I'll build it out like that. Like, I think, you say it so flippantly, and I know you don't mean it that way, but it's like, that's crazy.
Well, the real rationale is if we're going back 10 years and then I'm looking 10 years in the future, I genuinely thought to myself, if this is going to be the future of surfing, and it's become an Olympic sport because of these facilities, that's why you see these iconic images in the Olympics. Why was surfing not an Olympic sport before that when it's got all these people around the world? It's really cool. You can't rely on the ocean. So whilst there's a big debate in the industry whether wave pools should host competitions, whether it should be ocean, the point is the Olympic Committee could see that we're at a point in time where, we're lucky with Paris because you go to Tahiti, we've got Los Angeles, we're going to Brisbane. These are surfy locations. But in the future, you can have backup locations or central locations of wave parks. And the IOC said, fine. So my guess was if this is going to become Olympic sport, then lots of money was going to be put into the surfing industry. And that's what's happened. Surfing's been doubling in size in the UK since 2016. Over 1 million people surfed in the UK last year. But on top of that, I was already surfing and staying warm. I don't like the cold either. But I'd realised that there's a big breakthrough in wetsuit technology. There's obviously going to be a lag time before that becomes known by the wider market. And that meant you could essentially stay warm all year round. So I thought, well, wetsuits aren't going to get any worse, are they? They're only going to get better. And I can already go out in freezing conditions and stay warm in the right kit. And surfing's always going to be a popular sport. And then the staycation market, for instance, in the UK is very much undersaturated at scale. And Edinburgh's a really cool place. And people want to eat nice food and hang out with their friends. I thought to myself, well, if there's going to therefore be 100, 200 of these in 20 years' time, I reverse engineered that and I thought anything that there's 100 or 200 of in any industry, the big money's at it, the institutions are at it. You can't just have crazy people building 200 crazy people around the world doing that. So I thought, if I really want to make a career of this and be the best in Scotland, which is what I believe we've got a very good chance of doing and being, how do I not just build a wave park, but how do I make it attractive to the type of institutions who, if this market goes well, will be fundamental to rolling out? And we've positioned ourselves, I think, in a really competitive spot there.
I love that. So tell me this, and when obviously you've gone to the Basque Country, you've seen this thing. I think you said someone had mentioned that there was an idea for an inland surf park in Bristol.
Yeah, that's right.
So when did the Edinburgh site actually come along, or when did you spot it?
Well, the first payments I had, in fact, Wavegarden told me this was quite endearing in hindsight because they were used to people going to their site. I remember Larry Page had been on their site, and this was all very exciting for me as well, knowing Larry Page had been, Nick Woodman, the founder of the GoPro, had been there, and I was there. And my Fernando, who, like I say, is a great friend of mine now, owner of Wavegarden, he took me out into San Sebastian, a few pinchos, beers. I can get used to this. It's better than a night out in Brum. and a few nights he goes, right, Andy, you got any money? I said, no. Why are you here? I don't know. Shall we get on it? Yeah, okay, fine. And it was that kind of, I think in hindsight, they really respected that honesty because they were used to dealing with people who either did have a lot of money or had a lot of land. And for whatever reason, I've noticed this over the years, the higher you get in business, and we've dealt with billionaires now, institutions, national banks, and I've also dealt with just normal people, shareholders like ourselves. There's an ego that builds, and it's a strange thing to behold. It's almost the antithesis of collaboration, and I think one of the things. So it's actually very hard to piece these together because at every spot I've had to be humble. Okay, I don't know everything here. And Martin, well, we talked before. Martin Stevens, Harrison Stevens, will you take some smoked salmon and cider and just do me some drawings? If you can do me drawings, I'll speak to my other mate, Andy McNabb, in planning. He'll give me some on-tick advice, because I used to work with him. And then we'll start to build a case. And they're like, and then I'll do a feasibility study with Sean Young, who seems like pretty eager to help. And I kind of told all these people, you're probably not going to get paid, but I'm going to give this my best effort. They were endeared by that. So then about a year later, I met my uncle had found out, what's all this nonsense been chatting about surf park? I said, and he said, come and have a lunch with me. I said, fine. So he said, so you owe people, like, how much do you owe people? I said, I don't owe anyone anything. They're just doing it because I've been honest with them. He said, can I help? I said, yeah. He said, could I give you a loan? I said, yeah, but it has to be a loan. It's not a gift. This is not nepotism. It has to be a loan because, you want pride and you got your own pride. And he said, fine. And he lent me £40,000. And I sent £5,000 checks in the post to these guys. They thought they were never going to get paid. Now, that wasn't the amount that they were expecting, even the top amount. They just couldn't believe this is coming good. And then, right, how do we help you more? No more smoked salmon and cider, boys. There's $5,000. And then I used one of the 5,000s to sponsor a guy called Jamie Marshall, who's now a doctor in surf therapy, the world's first doctor in surf therapy. And he's a fantastic guy on our site. He's leading all our blue health and our mental health stuff. And he's taking me to California now. And they're going, how Scottish business actually cares about this stuff? So we spent our first 5,000 putting him through his PhD. And the reason is, if I was ever going to put my life on hold to do this, I was going to do it correctly. It was just no compromise. I wanted to do it exactly how I wanted to do it.
That's crazy. So you've got your 40 grand, or you got a lot less now because you've been handing out your fives.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, the drawings are getting better.
Yeah.
You've got people starting to help you, but okay, maybe you got 20 grand left. That's not cutting it.
No, well, I remember I had about 7 grand left, and I was like, right, this was all geared towards.
And when was this? Sorry,
I think it's be 2014, 15, something like that.
Great.
But it was all geared towards planning, because this is where the sort of, let's say, the business person in me knew that if we could get planning permission on this site, then I could start to leverage the land values to get to the next step and maybe make this thing happen. And so on the site we were on, we had to make very sure that it was a site that the council would see was going to be a really nice, good public amenity, bringing over 11 or 12 million per year into the local economy, giving dog walkers around the site a place to go for coffee, and just supporting schools, which is what we're doing, supporting universities, which is what we're doing. If they could see all of that, then it was going to be very hard for them to say no to it. And then on the other hand, I had to make sure there was a coherent business plan in there to actually fund this thing. So my last sort of 7,000 of the 40, what had happened in the Basque Country was, I said when I visited there first, I think it was end of 2012, it was an old machination of the kit. And there was a real inflection point where I started to doubt this a little bit around about 2015, because there was another facility opened in the UK, in Wales, and all I wanted to see was people turn up and not get cold. I knew that, and they did, but there was some issues with the mechanical reliability. The things that pension funds care about is not so much surfing. They care about sinking funds, mechanical reliability, redundancy, water filtration, health and safety, quite rightly. And those things hadn't been quite mastered, and ultimately we needed the capacity of this lagoon to be a high margin piece of kit. And Wavegarden had been telling me before then that 45 waves an hour was even, when I went and visit them, was a really good effort. And they turned around and said, we've invented something that's 1,000 waves an hour now. And I was down to my last 7,000. I thought, oh no, have I been hoodwinked here? You can't just go from 45 to 1,000, but you never underestimate Wavegarden. They'd secretly been building another test facility in the mountains of the Basque Country. They said, fly over and take a look at it. This is now 2016. I was down to my last cash. I said, I'm not going over there because I'm just going to love it too much. So I sent over the guy that had built one before, an engineer, lovely guy who had no interest in surfing. He came back and said, they've nailed it. And then I said to Sean Young, the guy that gave me the intro, you go and have a look at this.
Why did you not want to go?
Because I didn't want to risk just having too good of a time and being lured into the most important elements of the project, which are its mechanical viability and the engineering. But when Sean Young, who's a more reserved guy, lovely guy, and he got out the lagoon and he was giggling like a kid, they've done it, the world champs surfers are here, and it's like, it's endless waves. I said, right. So I used the last 7,000 to bring, I thought, I want to see this at the same time as other people that I trust. So I brought some of the surf community, flew them over, the Larg family, Marty Larg, Ben Larg. Ben Larg, we took him over when he was 11. He now surfs Nazare, the biggest waves in the world for Red Bull. So we've got all this history in the project. I brought over some family and stakeholders, and I watched them turn that machine on in 2016, and everyone's jaws just went, ugh.
Really?
And we went, let's go home, let's raise some money, get this into planning and do it. Yeah.
Do you know, I can't help but think, going back to what you said earlier, but when Fernando kind of sat you down and had a beer and then asked you at that point, do you have any money? So glad that he didn't pre-qualify his prospects. Yeah. Can you imagine if he'd said, asked that before you even flew over?
Yeah, I know, exactly. I might have to spin him a wee white lie.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mate, I'm excited. Like, you just tell this story, and this is so great, by the way. I'm loving it. It's just so great. Right, keep going. So you get home, you've been over, you get home, you've had your stakeholders there, you've had some great surf people. You know, the land you didn't own yet?
No, we didn't own land. And that was another thing where my property brain was kicking into gear. If I knew that we were going to, if I was going to make this, all right there?
All right, these things happen.
I thought I was supposed to be the amateur.
That'll do.
I thought if we're going to do this, and like I said, make this an institutional grade, in my mind, what that would be, so we can really capitalise on this in the future. I think it was just really important that we owned the land, because if you're raising money on this scale, it's a £55 million development. You know, we've had to raise over 100 million in structured finance, but it's a £55 million development. If we were going to do this, then you're going to have stakeholders. You're going to have major stakeholders' mouths to feed. And obviously, if you want to do it, you want your own vision. You don't want to get swamped. So we thought, we'll take one of those elements away by becoming the landlord and doing a deal. So we did a deal with a family, the Brewsters, who we're very friendly with, and we gave them some equity as well, so we could get an amenable price we could both agree on, and off we went to the races, knowing that we were landowners. Yeah.
Right. So you had the land at that point. You've got the guys. Then you're coming back over, and so now you're at the stage saying, right, we're raising money. We need some big money.
Yeah, that was where I thought, let's get into planning. So I actually, instead of going, there's a big pre-consultation period. I spent what felt like 2 years just going to the city chambers in Edinburgh, going to the community councils in Ratho, going to local developments, and just saying, like, do you want this? Like, because if and they would guide us. You know, we want this, but we don't want that. And we with Martin Stevens, we were amenable to changing the plans there, as long as the broad business plan wasn't affected. 3 business plans: accommodation, experiential, foodies paradise, surfers paradise kind of thing. As long as they weren't touched, we could work with the locals. You know, you'd hear, I remember meeting some locals who owned caravan sites, and they were a bit worried about things. We'll take them out, that's fine. It's not displacement. This is supposed to be adding to the economy, not stealing business from others. So knowing that, we then thought, okay, if we lodge this planning permission, I think we're going to get it. And that was important, because we did get it. It was kind of terrifying, because that was a few £100,000 that we had to find, and that money could have been lost, that could have disappeared if that decision didn't go our way. But as soon as that happened, our land got valued at, I think it was, the initial one was 3 million. You know, it had to come a long way even since then, but that was enough to go, deep breath. We are now a property developer. I think this is something that maybe, you know, I recognize myself and those around me do it, but we're I think, arguably as successful a property development company as there has been. You know, we purchased land and have for not a lot, and I've pre-sold it for on a sale and lease back for a lot to Goldman Sachs, and that took a long time. That took a lot of methodical work.
Yeah, so you've got this incredible vision for this surf park, but actually, as you say, it's like this is a property deal almost. It's like the McDonald's thing, right? It's like
totally. I wanted to underpin. I wanted to defend this project with property metrics, and even if that meant slightly less IRR, if you did a jazzy business plan, but uncap the opportunity with making it a dividend play, and also making and saying we're on to what we believe are chairlifts for the surf industry. And if this is correct, before there was skiing before chairlifts, but there was the hardcore, the guys that climb up the mountains and ski down. And then chairlifts, suddenly you get ski resorts everywhere. So if this technology has reached the end game metrics of like the waves are big enough, the waves are already amazing. It's 27 at the touch of a button. The software is just incredible. They come up with new software in the Basque Country. They send you it, you push, go, and off you go. Whilst the evolution of the industry will continue, and these will probably get cheaper, more refined, more all sorts of things. The end game metrics of fun in the industry are there. If we sort of already were convinced about that, then it left us in a position where we had no doubts that we just had to leverage this land value and keep going.
Yeah.
This is the thing, we've got so many questions here. In terms of the kind of the skills and experience that you've needed through this project, I mean, obviously you had the property skills, but the kind of the investment and getting the finance, was that something that you had before, or have you just learned along the way?
Just learn it on the hoof.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, the thing I've learned the most probably, there's been a lot of learnings in the last 10 years. I'm glad I was kind of naive to how hard it would be, otherwise we wouldn't have done it. But now I'm like, thank God I did it, because like, look where we are. So, but I think I've been a mixture of listening to everyone around you and being really humble and understanding that you just don't know an awful lot, but being extremely assertive when it comes to decision time. So, and just backing yourself and your own decisions. And I think an example might be if you're looking at an architecture decision or something like that, or it could be anything, and your mate's an architect, so you ask his view, and then you got another mate and you ask her view, and their views aren't going to be the same. They're both experts. There's just no way they're going to be the same. So it was kind of like, I feel like I need another view, and then I make my own mind up, which is in contradiction to two experts, probably by default. And it was piecing that. So it's always understanding that I've never actually followed anyone's decision verbatim. Like not even Wavegarden on the tech, like everyone, I've had to go, does this all make sense? And then just assertively go, it makes sense to me now. That's what I'm going to do. And so I think it's that.
Yeah. So you get planning approved. Mm-hmm. Now you got to build it, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Not the easiest. And then, so what I was there, we've been lucky, right, as well. Like, fortunately, it got to a point in, let's say, 2019 where the first two in the world opened. So there was the Wave in Bristol and Urban Surf in Melbourne, both fantastic facilities, both doing really well. And we just started to get a pinch point on data. That was what we were really after. Well, all this chat, is it just for nothing, or is there data coming out the market? And because that data started to come out the market, what ended up happening is the valuers who value these projects, the Red Book valuers, and it helped. I actually used to be a Red Book valuer. I was not a very good one, but I did do it, in my training for a bit as a surveyor. And I understood that really that's all they're looking for too. So that land value, which was 3 million, they started to value that at 17.5 million, right? But 17.5 million, that was purely based on this being a wave park, which it wasn't at that time. So that was good enough for me, but that's not going to be good enough for a bank or a serious funder. So we then had to look at an alternative use value. And fortunately at that time, the care home sector was exploding, and we'd shown that planning was possible on this site. And we had some interesting offers from the care home sector. And it's at that point I could say to folk, you can't argue against this now. This land is worth 17.5 million. And when the land was worth 17.5 million, now we could start having conversations with more sophisticated investors. Yeah.
Okay, so those conversations started happening.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised I've not asked you guys for money, to be honest. I've been around the block. In fact, and it's something that has actually been a bit of a curse for us as a project. I joke about it now, but we became that project. Is there a surfy thing going on out in there? So in Edinburgh, I've got less credibility in the investment markets in Edinburgh because they all thought of it as a daft thing early, and then I've never really taken the time to sort of show anything other than that. So rumours circulate. So most of my conversations had to be with people that I trusted and I could really walk it through, or people if I go into London or New York, they all think we're doing something unbelievable here. You know, they want, we've been offered huge amounts of money to go and roll out into Manchester and into London already. And, you know, whether we're going to take that, no, because we're doing it our way and we want it to be on our terms. Until the institutions realise that what they're buying into has got to be, I believe, the future of experiential business globally, which is very customer focused. It's not just based on a spreadsheet. You have to be getting into your local schools. You have to be showing cities that you can you're going to be a force for good. You have to be tying up with the educational systems. You have to be making sure that your surfing communities are on board, because that's your reputation. You got to be going to the people that live next to you and understanding that local village is your reputation. And that's a big challenge for us, right? Because these guys, and that's not what big institutions do. They go, right, this is making money over here. Let's plonk one there and plonk one there and plonk one there. And I personally don't think that's a very sustainable way in the future. I think it's going to be, business is changing, so a lot more flexible now. I think that's why I started Flexible Workspace Business. I like this idea of hedging my bets across multiple things. So I'm yet to be proved right at all. Like, we're sat here pre-operationally, so I can't say anything, but my hunch is that the customers who come to see us want to feel like it's a family business. They want to feel like it's ran by people who care. And if we do that, we can hopefully, run a very successful long-term business. And that's ultimately what I think the institutions actually want.
Mm-hmm. Andy, who made you redundant? Bloody idiots, eh? I say that because I mean the way you talk is in terms of the size of your vision and the impact that you're looking to have. It's incredible. And
I've been made redundant twice. At the same company.
Okay.
So there you go. So and that's probably because my heart wasn't in. You have to love what you do. Yeah. Not just that. The first one was probably a recession and just being raw. The second one was more because I was getting on well in Birmingham, and I said to my boss, he didn't like me for a year, that this guy knows nothing, but he liked me by the end. And I said to him, I'm moving home, I'm moving to the coast, like I'm just doing it. And he said, I'll get you a spot in Edinburgh and you can sit on a desk here. And of course I sat on a desk, I didn't really have a place. And then it was that. And my head was like, by that stage, I was ready. I was like, yeah. So in fact, I actually, a shout out, I did have a really good boss in Edinburgh for a while. A guy Christian Bruce, when I joined him in 2014 to set up his investment desk or to help him with investment, I said to him, Christian, I'm really sorry, but I'm also running this daft idea. If it has legs, I will be leaving. And he was like, of course, this is amazing. And he's a small shareholder now. He can't wait. He keeps texting me, when are we surfing? So I had to hand him, it was 2017, actually, I handed my notice in with him. And then the Business Centre business opened in 2018. And we're almost there in Lost Shore.
Look at that.
Yeah.
And what about you mentioned kind of earlier, about building a loyal team. I mean, it's no surprise to me that you kind of managed to quite easily kind of attract people into your world, but tell us a little bit about how you build a team.
I've just been so lucky with the people. I think we touched on it a wee bit with Mitch. Firstly, and I mean this not even in a humble way, when you're dealing with something that's so exciting and surfers want to get involved and it's a project that it's challenging, but there are a lot of people that are in it with their heart as well. And so in the early years, whether it be your Martin Stevens or your Tony Atkins and Andrew McNass for planning. You know, I had it was basically Laura Tainch, our lawyer, just, you know, so clever. I mean, equity partner at a law firm, just fell in love with the project, and I just took her everywhere I went, and so we could have synergy on contracts. Or you know, Leslie Ferguson and the team at Perceptive. You know, in the early days, I could tell we weren't just a job for them. You know, Sunday, there's a problem, Andy. We're there. And I suppose just seeing that, and I enjoyed that. You know, I enjoyed that whole. We're building a team here. You know, this isn't just a business. We're building a team. We're building a family almost. You know, in that sense. So I think it's just been an extension of that. You know, I'm not around. We've got lots of staff now and everything else. I know them all, but what I'm trying my best to do is there's such a good culture instilled into some of those early people who are still all there. You know, across both businesses, we've never had anyone leave, which is amazing. And I just hope when we get our lifeguards and our surf instructors and all the rest of it, I hope that they can, they're not going to be able to vibe off me personally. I hope they can vibe off all these good people who love the project just as much as I do.
And it's interesting because you talk about this idea of, you know, creating almost like a family feel to the operation, but you are transitioning quite quickly to a big business, eh?
Yeah, it's a really good way to put it. You know, my world is coming to a close, and it's not in its entirety because we've obviously got some other plans in the future. But it's very important for me to understand that I wouldn't hire myself to run this place day to day, and so. We've got an unbelievable staff now. You know, we've got Andy Roger, who ran the Cameron House Hotel for 10 years. He's heading us up as CEO. Ian Williams, who was operations manager at Eden Project and opened the Wave Bristol. Really experienced guy, ran David Lloyd's all over the country. We've got the likes of Lauren, who's just come from the opening of the Johnny Walker in sales. You know, Emma, who's come from the Macri, our head of marketing. Lee, who's our head of surf ops, who's ran arguably the most successful sort of surf operation on the west of Ireland for the last 16 years, as far as what I can see so far. Even the guys in Scotland that I know talk highly of him, and he's running our surf ops, very much community field guy. The list goes on and on and on and on. Yeah. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So the whole, you know, I'm not going to name the whole team, but they know that like every one of them has almost been hand curated, and you know that's why I think that we're going to open the best toy, in my opinion, the best toy in the world on the edge of Edinburgh, most consistent surf break overnight in the world, starting in 6 weeks on the edge of Edinburgh. Nice food, nice accommodation. I don't think we can do much more. All we can do is welcome people, you know, do our best, have the right people in place, and see where it goes. Yeah.
Build it and they will come, eh?
Yeah, it's not the first time someone said that to me, but it's like, no, it probably is a wee bit like that. Yeah.
So, where you just going to surf?
I hope so. Yeah. My daughter, she's 8. She said, "Daddy, what on earth are you actually going to do?" She says, "Why don't you just go and be a surf coach?" I went, "Actually, that's not a bad shout." So no, if you want the honest answer on that. We've created a recipe here, a business recipe here that really is attractive, especially to the US market. So I'm going out, for instance, to California at the end of September to Surf Park Summit, and they're all going, "How have you done this? How have you become an institutional grade surf park?" And so my plan is to work very, very closely with the providers, Wavegarden, the Basque Country, a lot of loyalty there, brilliant family. And under the guidance of my long-suffering father and uncle, who just have given me bits of advice. You know, I sometimes have struggled with knowing I didn't have a boss, because like it is, you get a lot of responsibility. And Dad was a school teacher, and he's just a really common sense guy. And obviously he would untangle stuff that all these business people couldn't untangle. He says, "No, just do that." Oh, yeah. Or Pete, you know, my uncle, who backed me from the start, he's like, he was, you know, a proper business guy, unlike me. And again, just a little bit of advice here and there. So with all those guys, I want to just see if there's a little bit of a magic sauce where we can create the global template for how these look in Scotland, and then pull all the Scottish companies and businesses who we worked with us, and maybe just maybe find a wee opening to say, right, if you want to trust us with your with your cash, we can show you how to do it all over the world. And it was born in Scotland, and that's what that's a thought for me. And if not, I'll just become a surf coach and be happy. Just try and be happy with my lot.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
And out of interest, forgive my ignorance of the surfing world, but I mean, you know, you wouldn't expect Scotland to be the kind of the central point of that industry. But you know, I'd have thought it was someone like Australia or.
Yeah, so it's a really good question, but there's nothing stopping us being the brain of surfing, and that's the key. Nothing stopping us being the brain of surfing. It's a very passionate surf community. I actually sit on the board of the Scottish Surfing Federation, and we're getting bigger and bigger here in Scotland. We've got some of the best waves in the world lap our shores off Thurso, you know, and Mother Nature's not turning that tap off. You know, you ask the Hawaiians what's different between the North Shore of Scotland and North Shore of Hawaii, says no difference. It's the waves are unbelievably world class, but they're very remote. So we've got this untapped resource here in Scotland. But more importantly, from a, let's call it an economic standpoint, wouldn't it be great for like the cycling guys have done at Glentress, for the surfing industry to grow here? Now you can go and work in your industry. You can justify coming up with a new surf wax here, and you can start a shop here and all the rest of it. So I think that in Scotland it's growing, and it's going to get bigger and bigger. On the elite side, I was very inspired by a couple of books in the early 2010s, which was a book called Bounce by Matthew Syed, which is all about 10,000 hours. And there's a book called The Goldmine Effect by a guy called Rasmus Ankerson, and it's all about little pockets of sporting success all over the world, whether it be Russian female tennis players or South Korean female golfers or Jamaican sprinters or whatever it is. And really all it came down to is, there's a lot of ingredients, but one of them for sure is repetition. And as an example of how good we can get our local kids here, which is mad to think about, the Audrey Azola boys, who are the sons of the founders of Wavegarden from the Basque Mountains of the Basque Country, just got first and third in the world in the under 16s and 18s respectively, because they've grown up surfing one of these. And there's an English kid called Lucas Skinner who's just medalled as well in the Worlds. So those days of Hawaii, they're still the dominant forces. Hawaii, Australia, as you'd expect, Brazil is the main dominant force now because they see it as a route out the favelas. It's called the Brazilian Storm and surfing. It's really interesting. But look, the world is our oyster for here. If we can train these kids up properly and harness our resources, we can be some of the best surfers in the world in 10, 12 years' time, I think.
Yeah, incredible. What's opening day going to be like?
I thought you were going to ask when it was going to be, and I was going to go, oh, don't ask me that. I don't know. I've not had time. It's really tricky. Even to every day is a challenge. You know, still on this project, there's light at the end of the tunnel. I've not thought about it. I've not. I just can't. Like I say, every day's still a challenge, and I just think if I think too much about that, you know, I'll say, oh my God, it's going to be so epic, all this journey, and then I'll go, right, actually, I've got to be there in 10 minutes, right? What are we talking about with the lawyers? So I know that sounds mad, but I think I did a lot of thinking about that in the early years, but I don't think about it anymore. I think it's just going to hit me at some stage. Yeah.
Incredible. Andy, we ask all our guests, what is your guiding principle in business?
Right. Well, I suppose given my own background and knowing that, you know, I definitely wasn't very good at things I wasn't passionate about, and having seen a lot of the people who've been most helpful to me on the project, in particular, you know, my right-hand man, a guy called Chris Bain, who I used to play rugby with, his CV, you know, on paper might not look the best, and he just ran our whole construction project. And the builders are like, we basically wouldn't do another project, you know, without you, kind of thing. You know, he's that good at it. And the take is that, you know, I wouldn't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, and that's it. You know, I think there's potential in every person. It's just sort of mining it and letting them free.
Yeah. Fantastic. Andy, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story. We're excited for opening day, and we wish you all the luck in rolling this out across the world.
Good. Well, I should do a shout out then, a plug, if that's all right.
Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, so I think we've got, we'll we should be open in like a week or so's time to the public. I mean, I don't know when this will go out, but get onto our website, get onto our socials, book some surfing, come down. We'll keep you warm, and we might just get you addicted, but at the very least, you'll have a great time with your friends and your family. So yeah, hope to see you there.
Brilliant. Well done.
We'll be there.
All right.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Cheers.
All right.
Thanks,
Good
Andy.
luck.
No worries.